I'm here too. It's great.
Well, since everyone is here, we will get started. Namaste and good afternoon, everyone. I am Apeksha Gimire, host of today's event. I want to thank everyone and welcome each of you on the behalf of NxtGen team for joining us today. I think many of us are interested to know about NxtGen. So what is NxtGen? NxtGen is a unified campus organization with students from all the departments of Pulcho campus that promotes student learning experience and develops industry-level skill in them. And we are fully committed to assist youths in their personal and career development and help them make a positive impact around the community. Likely, Quantum Hack is one of the largest student-run international digital hackathons aiming to bring a large group of innovators to collaborate and solve real-world problems in a relatively short time. It is a 24-hour hackathon backed by MLS Major League Hacking and will feature up to 240 global participants. It will address the need of bringing industries and innovators together to collaborate for mutual benefit. Now I will introduce our team member. We have Mr. Jay Kishan Panjiar as the president, Mr. Sagar Shrestha as a chief correspondent, Mr. Biplab Karki as a technical manager, Ms. Anisha Adhikari as a media manager, Mr. Nirdesh Bhatrai as a marketing manager, Mr. Sujan Shrestha as a sponsor manager, Mr. Akash Sharaf as a creative designer, Mr. Anjil Vishwakarma as a graphics designer, Mr. Aman Gupta as a event manager, and Ms. Apeksha Ghimire as a social media manager head. I think we all have registered our seats for Quantum Hack. If not, the link is provided in chat box. Please go through it. Today we will be facilitated by Julia Schetelig, the founder of Generation Impact from Singapore. Generation Impact is a resource platform with information, events, and opportunities to help youth make a difference and connect with change makers for free. It has been providing the platform to connect the youth who aspire to change the world. Today, Julia will police up social entrepreneurship among us. So without further ado, I would like to pass things off to Julia. Please welcome her.
Hello, everyone. I know what you're thinking. She really doesn't look like she's from Singapore. It's true. I am in Singapore at the moment. I'm not Singaporean. I lived here for a while and I'm still here, but I'm unfortunately not Asian by blood, as you can see. Friends, could you please make me the co-host or host so I can share the presentation that I spent way too much time on? I'm the co-host now. Beautiful. Let me share my screen with you. Hello. So this was supposed to be a screen. Can you all see my screen? Patricia, I can see you right now. So if you are nodding, I'm going to take it that everyone can see my screen. That was a very subtle nod, but I'm going to take that as a yes. Thank you. Oh, yes, please. It's great that we can all discover different coloring things, but it would be really great if you could not disturb me through the conversation because it is kind of annoying. All right. How do I get rid of this, friends? Thank you so much. Suprema, was this introduction already made? I am going to take that as a yes. All right, I'm just going to continue. Hello, my name is Julia Schetelig. Don't worry too much about how to pronounce my name. I am still working on trying to find a pronunciation that works everywhere. So it's really up to me, I think, to make it easy for you guys. So I'm here because I love to empower young people to make a difference. I'm going to talk a little bit about my social enterprise later, but all you need to know right now is that I'm really here because I get excited about young people who say, impact, making a difference, changing the world, that's what I'm interested in. And we're going to talk a little bit about social entrepreneurship today. I saw in the forms that you submitted that we're all at very different points right now. So some of you don't even know what social entrepreneurship is, and that's absolutely fine. And some of you say, like, I know that there are one or two out there who are probably more experienced in social entrepreneurship than I am, but nonetheless, I hope that all of you will get something out of this, something fun, maybe some connections. I hope to keep this a little bit interactive. I know that Zoom sessions can be really exhausting, but I hope that I can keep you all engaged. So what is ahead of us? I hope that we can have a little bit of fun. We're going to reflect a little bit to help you figure out your passions. We're going to talk a little bit about some decent theory. We're going to do some strategizing. We're going to talk about feedback, about how to give advice, some of those soft skills, because I think when we think about starting an enterprise, we often think about, what is my strategy going to be? How am I going to create a product? But really the thing that it rises and falls with is, how do we connect with people? How do I treat my teammates? How do I work through conflicts with my teammates? So that's really something that I want to talk to you about today, because fundraising, collaboration, conflicts, those are all things that people rise and fall with, and that I want to talk to you about today. All right. Let's just all close our eyes, because I don't know what's going on the screen right now. And sometimes it's at the start of the session, everyone's a little bit nervous. We don't know where to go. So I invite you to close your eyes with me and take a deep breath, because imagine we are all somewhere on the globe right now, very far away from each other, some perhaps closer than others. But this is an opportunity for us to connect young people from all across the world, really. And that's exciting. We have more than 18 different countries represented in this call. So your future co-founder, your future best friend may be in this room, and that's exciting. I think sometimes over Zoom, we lose the perspective of human interaction in these calls. And it's good to just set an intention for this call. What do you find your passion? If you really don't know, if there's a lot of things you care about, or you're unsure, how do you find out what business you're supposed to start? Well, the good news is it's really already inside of you. There are many people who try to solve problems they don't already know about, but I am so sure that if you are here, you've had some experience that has qualified you, that have made you qualified to create something that creates change for someone else. So the key to unlocking this is really reflecting. And we're a little bit we're the generation who's often under scrutiny that we're lazy, etc. And that has truths and false to it. But the impact project should really be something that you know about. And the only way you can find that out is sometimes by being bored, by being reflective of your life. And that doesn't happen if you're standing at the bus stop and think, oh, now would be a good time to reflect. But really put your phone aside, put everything that usually distracts you aside, and take time for yourself to think about the things that you have experienced and that you would like to give to other people. So your impact project should be something that you care about, and hopefully that you've already experienced. So journaling, meditation, talking with friends, counselor, or adults can help. Being bored, if you lay awake at night and you can't sleep, don't take your phone. Resist that urge. Just let your thoughts and creativity go wild. There's also specific exercises you can do. So one thing that I really like to do with people is draw your life. And that's really putting one spot. Let me get the picture. You start somewhere where you were born, and then you write down different events of your life that has made you who you are. So maybe you've switched schools, or there was an activity that you were part of, or you met someone. Drawing your life and becoming aware of the experiences you've had is a great way to find out, where is my passion? What things have I cared about in the past? What things did I struggle with? Where would I have needed someone to help me out? Maybe I can start a business that will Sorry, I think that I was just unmuted for a second. Can you hear me? And if you can't hear me, please holler. If you can hear me, please say something. Anyway, I'm just going to continue if no one says something. No, I should be audible. People are just not telling me. Yeah, draw the mosaic of your identity. So that's really, what is identity? Identity is what makes you who you are. And those don't need to be unique things. So you may have things in your identity that you share with other people. So I made a little bit of a diagram for you that I think could be a mosaic of my identity. And I have a microphone here because I really love to sing. I have Generation Impact there because that is me. I'm the founder of Generation Impact. I have a brain there because I study psychology. I have a little feather there because I really like to write. I really like to exercise. So these things I share with other people, but the unique combination of things is what makes me me. So I want to give you a little bit of a chance to reflect on yourself. And I am getting ahead of myself. So maybe take some time. You have a little piece of paper in front of you. Maybe do one of these exercises. So, oh, things are happening. Either draw your life or create a diagram of your identity. And I'm going to give you about 5 to 10 minutes for that. For you to really reflect and try not to go to the toilet at this time. Really try to just maybe turn off your screen. Don't think about anything else and just reflect. What has been part of my life? What is part of me? What could be something that I care about? And I'm going to give you 5 minutes time for that. And if anyone has a question, you're welcome to text it to me in the chat box if you want. But I hope that my instructions were clear. Just take 5 minutes to reflect. I am not saying anything right now, so if you are wondering why you're not hearing anything, is because I'm giving people another 3 minutes to write down either the path of your life or create an identity mosaic. So just take some time to reflect on really what makes you you, what you are passionate about. And Bipin, I can answer your question. Ride-sharing apps like Uber would not be categorized as a social enterprise because although the product may be creating value for society, the grander mission is not. Uber was not founded to create social value. Uber was founded to make money. But if Uber decided to give free rides to people, to homeless people, for example, with the money that they make and donate all their money to UNICEF. That would make Uber a social enterprise. Does that make sense? Not necessarily all their money, but it's really about an intention. Imagine if you walk into a room and what is your primary goal? Is your primary goal, I want to get rich? Or is your primary goal, I would like to support my family, but I also really want to create value for society? So companies where you clearly see that they have thought about both of these things are typically a social enterprise. And perhaps Uber is doing something that I'm not aware of, but as far as I know, Uber was not created with the intention to create social impact. Well, you can, replying to Sajan, you can be a donor to, you can be a donor to causes. The idea is if I have created a company, so I am the founder of a company, and with that company, I'm creating social impact. That's what social entrepreneurship is. You can make an impact without being a social entrepreneur if you make it. You can be a donor or a volunteer. All those people create an impact for society. But social entrepreneurs are people who create a business with the intention to also create value for society. All right, for those people who are taking part in the exercise and reflecting a little bit, I'm going to give you 1 minute. And then perhaps we can actually, it's sad, but like because so many people have been doing some wonky things, I wanted to do some breakout sessions with people. But perhaps you can write into the chat box some of the things that you were thinking about, so I can read them out. So I was going to divide you into groups so that you can talk amongst each other, but I don't think that's a good idea right now. But please write into the chat box, what have you noted down? Did you do an identity mosaic? What important life experiences have made you who you are? And what important pieces of your identity make you you? I'm replying to Harsh. I'm not selling anything. So Shafa said that education made her herself. And that is a really valuable realization if you realize that a person that has educated you or an educational experience has been a really important part of your life. That could be a passion you could tap into. Answering to Sasha, yes, entrepreneurship is inherently about creating a business. But that doesn't mean that in order to make an impact in the world, you need to be a social entrepreneur. If you go on my website, you'll find many, many ways to make a difference. Social entrepreneurship is really just one of many ways you can make something. And there are many different things that count as a business. Does anyone else have something to share about their identity or something that they were perhaps thinking about when reflecting on their life? It's okay if you don't quite know what you want to do yet. I think if you just go back and keep thinking about the things that have made you who you are and think about the skills that you bring into society, and keep thinking, I'm pretty sure you will find it. And until you found it, gain experience. There's so many social enterprises out there who need volunteers, who need helpers. So if you don't have an idea, join somebody else. We need also collaborating. All right. I'm gonna talk a little bit about the theory of change. So let's say you have an idea, just something that you care about, or a cause that you really, so let's take education or eliminating hunger, or empowering young girls to go into science-related fields. That can be an overall passion that you have. Now, how do you get from that passion, from that idea, this is something I want to change in society, to this is a product I want to create? I want to introduce you to theory of change. And as opposed to many enterprises where it's really, most normal businesses start with a product. So they say, I have created a new phone. How can I convince people that they should buy this phone? With social entrepreneurship, really should start at your goal. What do you want to achieve? And then you ask yourself, what needs to happen for that goal to be achieved? And what activities and products can achieve this? And which ones are you focusing on? So, of course, education, changing education, empowering women to go into science-related fields, that's a big task, and you are not expected to solve it all, but maybe drawing and visualizing for yourself, these are all the elements that are part of it. You can see, this is something that I could do. So it's really about writing preconditions. What needs to happen for that goal to achieve? What activities can create that? What products do I need for those activities? And then it's also important about thinking about what assumptions are you making with these connections. So just if you have, let's say there was a cure for cancer, that doesn't mean that everyone has access to it, because the product itself is not only the solution. People need to actually use the product. Product needs to be, people need to be able to buy it. It needs to be transported. So there are a lot of things that take more connections than one, and it's important to be aware of that. So as an example, I would like to talk through my social enterprise, Generation Impact. And my mission was, I want to help youth make a difference. I know that there are young people, and this was one of the assumptions that I made. I know that young people want to make a difference, but a lot of young people are not. So how can I help these young people make a difference? And then I was brainstorming. Well, first of all, youth need to be safe and healthy. If you have to worry about where you're going to sleep tonight or how much food you have on your table, you're not going to be able to have time or brain space to make a difference. Youth need to have the necessary skills to make a difference. Youth need to have free time to make a difference. Youth need to have the resources, like many change-making activities cost money. And youth need to have the self-confidence. So 2 of these things were not in my control. I decided that I am not qualified to make sure youth are safe and healthy. But luckily, there are many organizations that take care of that. But I said, that's not something I have experience in. That's not something I can solve. Also, I can't create free time for young people. I can't call your parents and say, hello, could you please give your daughter 2 hours off for her to volunteer? So those were 2 things that I wasn't able to change. But 2 things that I could imagine myself making a difference is helping youth gain the necessary skills, and youth getting access to the resources that they need, such as money or donations or materials. So if I say youth need to have the necessary skills to make a difference, the next step would be, okay, how would young people walk towards, actually, I'm going to use this drawing tool. Haha, now it is myself. So youth now can take part in training workshops, and that will hopefully create the necessary skills. But these training and workshops need to come from somewhere. So one of the activities of Generation Impact is doing workshops, such as the one you're in right now, and collaborating with people who are doing workshops. So how do I get out of this? A key element, this is an assumption I'm making here, is that youth need to know about workshops and fellowships. So I could have the best social entrepreneurship workshop in the world, but if no one knows about it, it's not going to make a big difference. So that's why marketing and advertisement is an essential part of Generation Impact activities. So one of the products that my organization does is that we run workshops, just like I'm running workshops right now. Another activity is connecting with collaborators. And another activity is marketing, because if I wasn't advertising, if NxtGen and if Quantum Hack wasn't advertising, you wouldn't even know about it. So you would never get the training, and you would never take part in the workshop. You would never have the necessary skills. You would never make a difference, according to this theory of change. So now let's tackle the other thing. Youth need to have the resources. Well, the resources need to exist. And this was kind of an assumption that I made. I'm going to put A here for assumption. I assumed there are organizations and resources out there for young people to make a difference. There are youth organizations, there are online webinars that I can link to, there are apps, there are conferences. I believe resources are out there for young people to make a difference. Problem, however, youth don't really know about it. So what could I do in that? I can create Generation Impact, which is a website where people need to follow Generation Impact, and that way they learn about my resources. Oh, this was a beautiful error. And then they have the resources, and then they can make a difference. What else is and that is product resource browser. So if you go on my website, you'll see that when you go on the front page, you can say, I want to find fundraising activities. I want to find change-making apps. I want to find small ways in which I can make a difference. So that is one of the products I came up with. That is my product that I'm selling for free, so to say, although I'm not selling it. And then another product is that I do a lot of mentorship. So I have people come in to talk to me specifically, and I advise them. But I have to admit, it doesn't quite fit into my theory of change yet. I haven't quite figured out how I can make sure that people know about it, that they have the right implementation. So that's important to realize, because your theory of change does not need to be perfect right away. This is something that you can go back to and rewind, and it's actually important that you go back to it and think about it again, reflect. Maybe something didn't work out, maybe you forgot something. This is malleable. The most important thing is that you don't forget that it's about your goal. It's not about your product, because I may realize one day that my resource browser is not helping anybody, that my resource browser is actually not the essential thing that helps young people make a difference. Maybe I should work on something else. But it's important that I focus on what did I want to achieve, because then I can change my theory of change and not get bummed and say, oh, well, this didn't work out. Well, then I'm a failure and I'm just going to stop completely. So focus on your goal, not necessarily on your products, and then you're way more flexible. All right. Now I want you to try it. I know, of course, like when I studied this at university, we had about 2 weeks to create a theory of change. So of course, I don't expect you to have it all right away, but if you have a piece of paper, maybe as I was talking, you thought of something where you were like, oh yeah, I have an idea how to solve a problem. So I want to give you 5 to 10 minutes to write that down. Let me see. Let me give you 5 minutes. And if you need more than that, please say that in the chat box. But use your pen and paper and make sure you note down all the thoughts that you have in your head right now. Thank you for all your questions, by the way. I'm going to make sure to go through my content first, but then I'm going to try to answer all the ones I can answer, okay? So yeah, I'm just going to give you 5 minutes to take paper and pen and create your theory of change. And I'm going to go to the chat box now so that I don't talk at you while you do work. I was talking without having my microphone unmuted. If you are working on your theory of change right now and you feel like you need more time, please say something in the chat box, because otherwise I want to move on, because otherwise I don't want you to be bored and run out of ideas. So if you need time, please put it in the chat box. Otherwise, I'm going to move on. All right, I got a message that we can move on. Wonderful. We're on the roll right now and we're not as far as I thought. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the roller coaster ride of business. Actually, we've been talking a lot, and let's get out of this conversation for a second. And there are so many interesting people here. We have 60 exciting youth from all across the world. Let me create breakout sessions, and I want you in those breakout sessions to talk about your theory of change or your passion, or share something. So maybe the specific question would be, if you would like to make a difference, what difference would that be? What do you care about? What is the one thing in the world you would like to change? And I'm going to create breakout rooms. If anything happens in these breakout rooms that you feel uncomfortable with, or where you're saying, oh, like there's something weird going on, just exit the breakout room and you're going to come back into the main session. All right, I'm going to create breakout rooms with 4 to 5 participants. This is your chance to connect with other change makers. I want to make sure that I give that space too, just because there's so many exciting people here. It's also your chance to unmute yourself and chat a little bit. How would you like to make a difference? What is one change in the world that you would like to see? You should now have been invited to join a breakout room. And I'm going to give you about 3 minutes time. You can click on it, and then it should take you to a breakout room. Should be a little sign that says breakout room. Or if someone has a question, we had a little bit of a discussion while everyone was in the breakout rooms. We're talking a little bit about changes in the economy due to Corona. This is why it's so important to have a theory of change, is that you can adapt your business to the circumstances, because sometimes needs change. Sometimes your goal is still the same, but how you can achieve that goal will need to change. And I think that's why a lot of businesses are struggling right now. It's because they were adapted to the status quo, and now they need to change, and change is always quite hard. Yes, I agree. Please speak English. That makes it a lot easier for me because I don't speak many languages, at least not enough for all of them. All right, let's give the people who are taking a break 2 more minutes, and then I'm going to move on.
Hello to everyone.
Good afternoon, Prasanna.
What are you doing, Dai?
Okay, you wanted to share something, you can say.
Yes, I just wanted to say something to Miss Julia, that how can she evaluate the business model after this pandemic, this coronavirus outbreak? How can we stabilize the economy and focus on
Okay.
the opportunity that the economy is down and we can do better after this pandemic is over?
Julia, are you there? Okay, actually, Prasanna, that's a tough question. How the economy going to recover? I hope Julia will answer this. But such questions, you better ask to economist who know, better about economy. So, Julia.
Hello, I'm back. I'm sorry. I too have human needs.
Okay.
What did I miss?
Prasanna was asking, wanted to ask you a question.
How has your journey been so far since you've been working on such an amazing initiative? Yeah, I can answer that. That's a nice question to ease back into it and wait for people to come back. Actually, I'm going to talk about that right now. That's actually a perfect transition into going back to our conversation, because it has been, let me move around all your faces before I continue, an absolute roller coaster. The roller coaster ride of business, those of you who have already founded a social enterprise or a business know about this. It's true. It's ups and downs. And I think this is how people think that success looks like, that you work, and then you work a little bit harder, and then there's a breakthrough, and then you have success. Let me just say that that's not how it works. I'm sorry, we would all like that it worked like that, because then it would be simple and straightforward. But unfortunately, any change-making journey is going to have ups and downs. So I found this a little funny picture on the internet, which I resonated with. I think that's how I feel about my change-making journey sometimes, that it's more like than a straight up. But there is a little bit of theory about how success looks like. Let's say you were to start your social initiative tomorrow. There's going to be an initial success curve, because it's that initial feeling of success brought about by supportive friends and family, because you're going to share about it on your social media. Your friends are going to be excited about it. You're going to talk about it to everyone. And that feels like an initial success because everyone around you is really supportive about it. But then at some point, your friends get used to it. And the curve kind of flattens, because people are like, oh yeah, Julia has this enterprise, I guess, who cares? And that can feel like a failure, because it feels like, oh, why is no one interested anymore? But it's really just natural, because that initial support from friends and family is going to stagnate at some points. And then you're going to make mistakes. And I'm not saying that because I believe you are bad people, just because I know that you are human beings, and human beings make mistakes. In fact, I made one this morning, and if you saw my email, I did not BCC all of you. That is a mistake. I'm sorry about that. Mistakes happen, and then you start doubting yourself. You may receive criticism from people. One of the first things that happened to me after I launched Generation Impact is that there was a misunderstanding with someone from who I was meeting at the United Nations in New York, and he wanted to collaborate. And for some reason, he was under the assumption that I was this all put together organization. And when we met up, he thought that I would show up with like a contract and a lawyer. And I was just like there, oh, this organization is actually just me. And he was really upset with me. And those moments that, I mean, that wasn't my fault. Honestly, it was a little bit his fault, but it creates moments of doubt. And I'm saying this not to discourage you, but to make you aware of these things. There's going to be mistakes and doubt in your journey, and that's completely part of it. It's just important to push through that and make sure that you learn from those mistakes and grow so that eventually there is success. So this is a little bit of the theory of success, just so that you're prepared of what you're going to get yourself into. But this is a real image of actually the page visits on my website. So you see that there is no perfect theory of initial success there. It is ups and downs, and that's really how it feels like. There are moments where I have a huge success, like right now I'm talking to young change makers, and then there's days where no one visits my website and I'm kind of like, okay, why am I doing all this work without getting paid for it? And that's completely normal, and knowing this is really important, because then when you are in these low moments, you know this is part of the journey eventually, and you see it in this graph slowly. With all these ups and downs, you're going to eventually come to a success. So how do we push through those ups and downs? First of all, I think it's really important to manage expectations. I'm going to show you a little bit of a video here. Let me hope it's going to work for you. So this is a friend of mine.
That you're doing it. I agree. Yeah, absolutely.
Who has a
when
YouTube
I started
channel.
off, I was very like, oh, like if you're trying to do something good, people are going to be nice about it. But you probably also know that that's not true. That is very far from true. Funny enough, when I started in 2018, I had that idea that by the end of 2018, I'm going to have about 1 million subscribers on my YouTube channel. Mm-hmm. And I was so confident because I'm just going to create some content. People will just watch it and subscribe to it, because by doing this, they'll be helping people in need without having to do any financial donations. And for me, that was like, it's a no-brainer. I mean, why wouldn't you do it? And then a year and 4 or 5 months since I had that thought, our channel is still at 470 subscribers. Which is pretty good. I was expecting to be a lot higher than that, to be honest. Just because you see so many channels out there that a lot of the content on YouTube is just, okay, let's be realistic, a big portion of it is crap. People.
All right, so you can see with my friend Stefan here, he has a great YouTube channel advertising sustainable products. And he really thought that he, within a year, would gain like millions of subscribers. So it's really important to manage these expectations in the beginning, because the truth is some companies have that immediate success and most of them don't. And that doesn't mean that your social enterprise is not a success. That means that it's a normal social enterprise that has these ups and downs. So you will be prepared, you will be better prepared for these ups and downs if you are more realistic about your successes. If you won't have that moment of, what? Why don't we have 2,000 followers yet? But you're just like, okay, you know, things are going to happen and I'm going to have to push through this. That's going to make you way more resilient if you foster that initial positive attitude. But also preparing for the unexpected. Sometimes good things are going to happen and you shouldn't be overwhelmed by them. So maybe have a plan in the back of your mind. What would happen if you suddenly got 200 collaboration requests? Do you know that you have friends who you could hire? Would you be able to take time off? Not because that's not necessarily going to happen, but if something great and big happens, you want to not be overwhelmed by it. You want to say, okay, well, I can do it. So I know that these things sound kind of contradictory, but I believe they can align with each other in that you manage expectations, you try to be realistic, but you also are open for things that you didn't think about, so that things can't take you too much by surprise. All right, so short activity, I would like you to write down 3 achievable milestones in the first year of your social enterprise. In your enterprise, or I've done this workshop before where people were creating businesses or where people were creating a conference, whatever change-making project you have in mind, this is your chance to write down 3 achievable milestones. I'm going to give you 2 minutes for that, just right until it's 0:00, just to think about if you have an idea, write down 3 achievable milestones. Thank you, Sasha, for sharing. 500 people is actually, it's a big goal, but it's actually quite realistic. And now the question is, when you have a goal, the question would be, how do you measure it? Is that people who have supported, who follow you on Instagram, or who subscribe to your website? But 500 people is definitely a reasonable goal, although it can be harder than you think. My Instagram channel does not have more than 500 people yet. 200 plus regular customers, that's a really realistic goal. To have an outreach of 10 to 20K people. You know what? If you manage to do that, please call me, because I want to know how you found that out. And you know, there's nothing wrong with aiming for the stars. So if you say ultimately you would like to be in touch with 10, 20,000 people, make that happen, and I believe in you. But the only important thing is that you make sure that you're not too fixated on that, so that just in case you don't achieve that goal, that you get disappointed. Because let's say, Akash, you wrote that you want to have an outreach from 10 to 20,000 people. That's great. Maybe that will happen, but maybe you'll end up with an outreach of 1,000 people, which is amazing. 1,000 people is a really good number. But if you have aimed too high, you may get disappointed. So that's why it's important to aim for high, but know that 1,000 followers, 500 followers is already a really good start. So ask around in the industry, look what other people are doing, make sure your expectations are realistic. All right, don't worry, I'm not gonna show you my TED Talk. If you want to see that, you're welcome to look me up on YouTube. I think I want to talk a little bit about a different way to push through these ups and downs, because something that's really not enough talked about in business is the importance of self-care and mental health. I'm talking about my TEDx talk here because this is something I get a lot of praise for and people are always so impressed. But really the story behind this is that the week before I gave this TED Talk, this was about 2 years ago, I was a mess. And I made a lot of mistakes that week with the thing that I was doing. I was about to run a peace conference in Cambodia, here in Southeast Asia. And I was in my last year of high school. I had an incredible amount of exams. I was really exhausted. And I had prioritized my team above everything else, because I thought, you know, I'm not as important. These delegates, my team is so much more important than me. So I have to push myself to be able to support them. The problem was that that was a really unhealthy thing for me. And the night before I gave my TED Talk about this very conference, I was actually just crying and breaking down. And I actually said to my team that I wasn't sure whether I would be able to go on the conference we were planning. And I was the chair of the conference, and my team was devastated and in panic, thinking that they would have to do it by themselves. And that was a really bad leadership decision, because you can't leave your team alone like that. But I had no choice because I was exhausted. I was literally mentally unfit to lead that conference. If you want to know how the story ends, you're welcome to talk to me afterwards or check out my blog. But the reason I'm telling the story is because you cannot pour from an empty cup. And young change makers are always the first ones to throw themselves into big projects and dive into there and say, bring it on, I can take it all. The truth is you can't take it all, and that's okay. You need to take care of yourself sometimes. You need to know what brings you energy so that you can use these energy for other things. So whatever you're trying to do in your life, whether it is starting a social enterprise, whether it is becoming an activist, whether it's becoming a doctor or applying for university, all these things require energy. And none of these things are more important than your health, because if your health gets bad, you will not be able to do the things that you want to do. And as a psychology student, as someone who struggles with mental health in relation to leadership myself, this is a really important disclaimer I want to give. Please take care of yourself. And everyone has very different ways in which they do take care of each other and themselves. So for me, I get very re-energized by being around people. But people who are more introverted may say, no, like I get energy by being by myself, by sleeping, by eating chocolate, by being alone, by watching TV. Find that out for yourself. Know where you get your energy from. So right now in the chat box, maybe if you feel comfortable, share some things that you think brings you energy. If you don't feel comfortable sharing, make sure that you write it down somewhere else. But if you have some things to share, please share. I would love to hear what brings you energy. Reading books. Reading books is a great way to calm down. Free food. I love that. Free food definitely gives me energy. What are your favorite foods, if you want to share that? Doing exercise. Exercise is a really good way to gain energy, because during exercise, your body actually removes all those negative hormones in your body. So cortisol, which is released through stress, is all removed from exercising. So definitely, that's a really good advice. Listening to music and taking a walk, playing games, meditation, very good. I have some mindfulness friends in here. My energy is my friends' inspiration, supportive words, and music. So yeah, if you need social support to gain energy, make sure you rely on that support system. Make sure you ask for help. Looking at international news, I love that that energizes you. I hope you're looking at different news than I do, but maybe that can be a source of motivation for sure. Being in a neat environment, Parana, you seem to know yourself very well, that you know you can't work in a chaotic space. Talking to like-minded people who understand what I'm going through, definitely. Dancing, make everyone laugh and roll. I have a visual imagery of you, Mahesh, like running, laughing and rolling now. Fighting for equality and justice with my comrades. The feeling of community, dancing, exploring new planes. Airplanes, fighter jets. Okay, it's getting a little bit out of hand. It's time to move on. All right, let's talk a little bit. Watching TED Talks, I like that one. Big shout out. Arts is so useful. Thank you so much for sharing this, guys. This is lovely. Make sure that you check these out. These are all really good examples. All right. I want to talk about feedback, because no matter whether you're going to do your social enterprise or a different project, you will have to receive and give constructive feedback, because we're not perfect and your teammates are not going to be perfect, and they're going to tell you about their mistakes, and sometimes you will need to tell them about their mistakes. So how can we battle through this? First of all, don't take feedback seriously from people you wouldn't go to advice for. This is a really important thing to remember, because especially if okay, perfect example. Remember at the beginning of this call where people just thought that it was really, really funny to draw all over my presentation? If I was discouraged by this, I would give up way too easily, because would I message those people and ask them for feedback about my presentation? Probably not. So why would I be bothered about their very wonky feedback about my presentation? Don't take feedback seriously from people you wouldn't go to advice for. That said, take feedback seriously from people you would go to advice for. So if you have very close friends or friends of family or your parents, and you say, these are people whose opinion I trust, sometimes they may share a piece of feedback with you that is a little bit difficult to digest, that is a little bit uncomfortable perhaps. But it's important to remember that those are the people who care about you. So if they share an advice with you, if they share feedback with you, you should perhaps consider it. So it's really important to be aware in your head, who are the people you would go to advice for and who are the people you wouldn't. So maybe, I love how we had a little bit of a sharing round just now. Maybe you can take a little bit of a moment to write into the chat box, who do you trust for feedback? And I know that we probably wouldn't know the names that you're using, but maybe it's a sibling or a teacher. Your mom, I love that. People who have a good relationship with their mom, perhaps. For me, I do have a selected list of friends that I take feedback from seriously. My siblings are always there. People who have been through the same situation I am facing. Kevin, that's a really good advice, because sometimes we take feedback from people. If someone was to teach me about social entrepreneurship and they have never started their own social enterprise, I should probably not take feedback from them. My teachers, Google. Yeah, Google definitely has some good advice out there. Someone who has a positive impact on my life, definitely. I like that advice. Someone who makes you happy is usually someone who cares about you and is going to give you good feedback. The one who's understanding me from the beginning and who have known me, that's a very good advice. Take feedback from people who know you, not just some random person on the internet. All right, let's move on. Stack Overflow for Codes, that's a great, your clients, taking feedback from your clients is a great idea because they have actually worked with you. I talk to myself sometimes, I need expert advice, jokes. Yeah, you know, sometimes you yourself have good advice. Sometimes we're so stuck in a moment that we have to imagine, what if someone came to me with this problem? What advice would you give your friend who has the same problem as you right now? So sometimes that can be a good thing. I know that was a joke, but someone who has experience in the field I want to take advice from, that's a very good thing to say, yes. Someone who knows the context. I see you're all very good at identifying the people who you take feedback from. So let's talk about when you receive feedback that may be true, that may come from one of those people that you say and you have decided, I'm going to take feedback from them. But it's criticism. It's something that you're not happy about and you feel a little bit weird. There's really two bad reactions to criticism. And first of all, that's shame. You're all familiar with it. It's that feeling of, oh, I'm such an idiot. Why did I do that? I will never be a successful entrepreneur. Everybody will hate me. Okay, that's catastrophizing. But we've all been there, and it's really not conducive to change, because while you are busy beating yourself up over what you've done wrong, you could have just taken time to learn from it and moved on. You could have just fixed your mistake. So that's one thing that we should be aware of, that shame, this like, oh, I hate myself, that's not conducive. That doesn't help anybody. So maybe if we can, shame, let's just put that aside and say, you know what, I'm a human being and I can make mistakes. The other way of responding to criticism is, okay, but this was not my fault. If you have siblings, you totally know this. It was my sister. It was somebody else. Oh, I couldn't have done it better because. That is also not conducive to criticism, because you're moving away from the point. Well, perhaps it's a little bit true. Maybe it was not all your fault. But if you don't assume responsibility, no one is ever going to change it. So one thing that I talk to people in the US about in particular at the moment is that this is really relevant in the conversations that we're having about race and privilege. That in the US, I'm sure you've been following the news, white people who look like me wake up to the fact that Black people in the US are being treated very badly. And these two reactions, white people who feel ashamed or white people who get defensive, that doesn't help us create a better world. I'm not talking about shame and defensiveness, because I think we can just strike that off our list. There's no monitor that we have in our pocket where we're like, excuse me, this feeling should not be felt today. But it's important to be aware of this so that when you feel these feelings, you can see, oh, okay, I can feel myself getting ashamed. I can feel myself getting defensive. Maybe I need to just take a step back. And for that, I've included a little bit of sentence here for you that's important to just maybe memorize it, maybe have it in the back of your pocket, and that's something that you can say when someone gives you your feedback, so that you don't have to say, you don't have to get defensive, you don't have to explain yourself. You don't have to say, oh, I'm so sorry, I'm such an idiot. You can say, thank you for your feedback. I will consider it and see how I can adapt it. That's just one sentence, and then you don't need to continue talking about it, so you don't need to continue feeling those like weird feelings that you feel. Just put it aside, make sure you are in a good space, and then get back to it. Maybe after 2 hours, when you've done all those things that you know give you energy, when you've listened to music, read a book, watched a TED Talk, revisit it, come back to that criticism, say, okay, did it come from someone I trust? Yes. Well, maybe I should look into this then, even if it hurts. That is how we can go about taking criticism productively. Not to beat ourselves up, not to be defensive, take our time to heal and be in a good place with our emotions, and then deal with it again. All right, we already did that. All right, now that we talk a little about how we can receive feedback, let's talk a little bit about giving constructive feedback. Giving constructive feedback is always difficult, and I'm sure those of you who've done teamwork in school before or any other public space, you know that it's hard to give constructive feedback because people get defensive and ashamed. So here are some rules of thumbs that I've created. I created this wonderful chart for you that I find very helpful when I think about giving feedback. First of all, ask yourself, did somebody ask you for the feedback? Because there's really no point in giving people feedback who haven't asked for it. I admit I've totally given people feedback that I shouldn't have given feedback to. It's not a nice thing to do, and usually that's where people are really just like, okay, I didn't ask for this, I'm sorry, and you're wasting your time. However, there is one time where it may be useful to give feedback, and that is even if you weren't asked for it. And that is if someone is at risk if you don't give feedback. So let's say your friend comes to you and is like, hello, I prepared this song and I'm gonna record a video of myself and put it all over the internet. And you know that your friend is maybe not a good singer. Your friend didn't ask you for feedback, but your friend may have a hurtful experience on the internet. So in that moment, you may say, hey, you know what? I think that your strengths are elsewhere. Maybe don't put this online. I think you could redo it. Maybe there's something else that you could put on there, because it's really about saving your friend from putting themselves at risk. Another thing that may happen is that, especially if you're in an organization or if you're part of a project, maybe someone is doing something that is putting your team at risk, your project at risk, or yourself at risk. That's where you unfortunately need to give feedback. And for the moments where you do choose to give feedback, I've created a little bit of a chart that's really based on trust and personal investment. I don't think I have to explain trust to you. Trust is really how close are you to the person? Do you think that the person trusts you? And personal investment. So if your friend came to you and said, I have written this poem about how much I love my girlfriend and it took me the last 2 weeks, that's high personal investment. It's a strange area to be in feedback, because if you just say something a little bit bad, your friend is going to be hurt because he worked the past 2 weeks on it and this is such a personal topic to him. So trust and personal investment. How personal, how sensitive is this topic that you're talking about to people? When people really trust you, and if there's low personal investment, so if your friend comes to you and says, look at this table I made in 30 seconds just now, and your friend trusts you, well, honestly, you can just be like, okay, that table doesn't look very good. I don't really understand what it does. And then your friend is like, oh yeah, I should probably redo it. That's very easy feedback to give. High trust, low personal investment. None of us really does mistakes there. Things get a little bit trickier if we're in a high trust situation and high personal investment, and low trust and low personal investment. So maybe your friend trusts you a lot, but maybe this is a topic that is really personal to them. So maybe they are allowing you to see a video of them singing, which they're very insecure about. So they may trust you a lot, but they are very insecure about the topic. They have a lot of personal investment in it. That's where we need to be a little bit more careful with our feedback. Or even if this is your friend comes to you, or this is not your friend, this is just a random colleague, and he's presenting to you a project that does not have very high personal investment, but because there's not that foundation of trust, it's still difficult. The hardest place where you have to be really careful with feedback is if there's no basis for trust and high personal investment. Chances are these people would probably not ask you for feedback, but if you are in a situation where you need to give feedback in this situation, know that this requires a lot of care. This is not feedback you can be like, oh, by the way, I just wanted to tell you. This is feedback where it's like, take a moment, make sure you're both in the right space. Plus, there are some things that you can do. First of all, acknowledge the elephant in the room. If this is someone your friend has worked on a lot, where there's a lot of personal investment, or if there's very low trust, acknowledge it. Say, wow, this must be very awkward for you. This must be a hard conversation for you, because I know that we're not very close. Or, oh wow, this must be a hard conversation for you because I know how much work you've put into this, because I know how personal this is to you. So these are all very important things to remember and acknowledge, that the person feels seen. That automatically makes the person relax a little bit, because you've shown that you've understood the situation a little bit. Also, try to build trust, especially if there's no trust already. So create an atmosphere, ask them how they are, explain that you care about them. Tell them, I am not here because I want to hate on you or because I think you are a terrible person. I am here because I want to support you and because I know that we have common goals. So if I have a situation where my teammate is not living up to their full potential, I can say, wow, I know that there's so much more inside of you, and I don't think that you are giving me everything right now, but I know that we are both fighting for the same thing. And just reminding each other that you're working towards the same goal, that you care about each other, or just stating that you care about them, can build really essential trust. Use meme messages. Meme messages is one of my favorite topics. I think if every 7-year-old was taught how to use meme messages, the world would be a better place. Let me give you an example for this, actually. I'm going to stop screen sharing for a second so I can see your faces, so you can see my faces and the whole thing. A couple of months ago, this was part of Generation Impact, I had just hired a new social media manager. And the problem was that she was actually a very close friend of mine. So we were actually living in the same space for a while. So I gave her the task of taking over my Instagram account, and we had agreed that that would be all her. So she would just take it from there. And after 2 weeks, she really hadn't done the work. I looked at the social media channel, what the things that she had done, I really didn't like. And most of all, she hadn't really posted anything. I was extremely upset, I can tell you, because I felt very frustrated. I had trusted her and she'd broken my trust. And also I was trying to put things out there and I couldn't. So this was for me a very angry situation. And the important thing I did is I didn't call her and say, I'm going to call her Lisa. Lisa, you are a horrible person to work with. You never do the work. You always disappoint me and your designs are horrible. I didn't say that because honestly, it wouldn't have led anywhere. The first thing I did is that I took 3 days to calm down. And that's exactly how long it took me to calm down, because it's important to put yourself in a space where you're at peace with yourself and where you have energy. And then I sat down with her on a phone call and I said, let me talk you through how this past couple of weeks were for me. I was initially very excited. I was very grateful for you to take over my social media account. But in the past weeks, I felt really, really uncomfortable and frustrated because I've been trying to put out content and I didn't see it. And I felt frustrated because we have such a close relationship and I didn't know how to approach this. And I felt frustrated because we had put a goal and it seemed like you weren't so committed. They're called me messages because I'm talking about my own experience. If I say, you are a bad social media manager, she could say, no, I'm not. But if I say, I felt frustrated because of your behavior, she can't say, no, you didn't, because that's how I'm feeling. I'm just expressing my feelings. So in any kind of feedback, it's really important to speak from your own personal experience and not generalize. To say, this is how this thing made me feel. This is how your behavior is impacting me. And that is a much better basis than accusations. All right, let me get back to my presentation. Also, sandwich the criticism. It's never good to jump in right away with, these are all the things that you did wrong. You've probably done this in school. Start off with something, oh wow, I'm glad you did that. Or I'm really grateful for the good relationship we have. Or I really love the thing that you did yesterday. Then give bad feedback or criticism, not bad, give good feedback, but criticism. And then perhaps at the end on a positive note, end on, you know what, I know that this has been a hard conversation, but I'm really grateful that we pushed through this together. That's really, really important because people usually remember the first and the last thing you say to them. So it's just nice to kind of have it all wrapped up. So if you remember to acknowledge the elephant in the room, you build trust, you use me messages, you sandwich the criticism, and you give yourself time to be in a good place when you have that conversation. Never have these conversations while you're angry. Give yourself time so that you are in a good place when you talk about these things. That's the only way we can give good feedback. Another, okay, this is something I'm going to talk about in a minute. So yes, perhaps this made you think or made you remember some of the feedback that you've recently given. Rewrite that. Maybe you realize, oh, my sibling didn't pick up their toys yesterday. I could have framed that differently. So just take a moment. You can write it in the chat if you feel comfortable sharing it, but I'm going to give you 4 minutes to write down what are some thoughts you're having. Rewrite a feedback you recently had to give. Maybe an issue with your coworker, your friend. Think back to that moment, knowing what you know now from this presentation. Rewrite that feedback. I'm going to give you about 4 minutes, and if someone feels comfortable to share, I would love to hear your story in the chat box. I'm going to, now 3 more minutes until 30. Actually, you have a 15-minute time difference, so this is all not your time. Never mind. Just know that in 3 minutes, you should be done. And if you don't feel comfortable sharing feedback, that's absolutely fine. Okay, Sasha, that sounds like a difficult situation to handle. Do you think you handled it well? I would love to hear your story, Sasha. Do you think you would handle it differently, just hearing what I talked about, or do you think you handled it pretty well? I'm sorry if I pronounce all your names wrong. You are all welcome to pronounce my name wrong just to get back at me. I'm going to stop talking now. Give you time. I'm sorry. All right, I'm going to give you one more minute to finish your thought. All right, I just want to share something really important that Patricia just raised, and that is the importance of giving positive feedback. I don't know what it says about me that I talk about criticism more than giving positive feedback, but it is absolutely important to let your teammates and volunteers and coworkers know how much they mean to you and when they've done a great job. Like, we all love hearing good feedback. Some of you just gave me very positive feedback, and I'm really, really grateful for it. I think sometimes we forget that people need to hear that they are important. So thank you so much for the people who've given me positive feedback so far, and share the love, be kind, make sure that you share more positive feedback than negative feedback with your coworkers. And if you can't do that, make sure you don't work with them. So yeah, it's a topic that's very close to what we were just talking about. How do you handle conflicts within teams? And I've shared a little bit about giving feedback, but just in general, like, how can you prevent these things from happening, and what can you do in the situation? First of all, one thing that I've really, really learned in the past 3 years running youth conferences is that it's so important to set and communicate clear expectations and deadlines. And this sometimes feels weird because I am the founder of Generation Impact, and everyone who works for me is a volunteer. So I don't pay these people. So it's really hard for me to be like, you need to do this thing by that time. So that feels really weird. And I think especially as a girl, you sometimes feel like you don't have that authority. But what I learned is that people would prefer you to give you a deadline and clearly what they want, because otherwise they don't know what to do. And many people don't take initiative. They're not going to be messaging you. The best thing you can do for your teams is be very clear about what you want them to do and by when. And let's use the example of setting up a fundraising initiative. It's not enough to say, hey, can you set up a fundraising initiative? Especially not if someone is not very familiar with that. Sit down with them and say, okay, we're going to fundraise. What different tasks will need to be done? Okay, we need to create a profile. We need to do the social media. We need to create posts for social media. So create to-do lists with deadlines and assign them to people. It sounds really simple, but I promise it's going to make your life so much easier. Deadlines assigned to specific people. There are also some great tools out there. There's like things like Trello and things like that where you can really assign a task to people, but have one document where this needs to be done by that time, by that person, and this is who you can talk to if you need help. Does magic. Prevents, I'm going to tell you, 80% of your conflicts within your teams because you're being transparent. Then again, sometimes 20% of the time, even if you use this, things are going to happen. People are going to disappoint you. Misunderstandings happen. I already said this. Take time for your own needs first. Don't rush into this feeling all the emotions that you're feeling and that you are allowed to feel. There's nothing wrong with you feeling upset. So take your time, do something that re-energizes you so that you have energy to use me messages. Refer to a common goal. I talked about that a little bit earlier. Make sure that people know that you care about them and that you're really just working towards the same thing and that it's not about them, but it's about doing this for a common purpose. So with my friend, my social media manager, Lisa, I said, hey, we both believe that young people need resources. So let's do this together. I know that you believe in this. And sometimes you need to give people an out. I've had to have these conversations, not part of Generation Impact so much, but when I used to run peace conferences, I had some facilitators who were not motivated. And you know what? That's okay. Some people may say that they want to volunteer, that they want to help, and then things change. And the fact is, it's much better to have that conversation and give them a way out of the project than to keep them going and constantly have the conflict. So sometimes you need to have that conversation where you say, hey, I don't know, how have you been feeling? That's a really good question, actually. Like usually when a person hasn't been doing their work, they know. So if you ask, hey, how have the past weeks been for you? And they're probably going to say, yeah, I know it's not really been going well. And then you can say, well, it seems like things have changed for you, so it was different than at the beginning when you signed up for this. Do you still want to be part of this? And then they may say, you know what? I don't think so. And then you say, that's absolutely no problem. Thank you for letting me know. Have a nice life. Make sure you part on good terms. Make sure that that's okay, because you don't want to be known in the social entrepreneurship or whatever field you enter as the mean person. So make sure that you part on good terms. But chances are they may say, I know I've made mistakes, but I want to better myself. Sometimes that's true, sometimes that's not. If this is already the second time you're having this conversation, don't give them another chance and then say, yeah, I don't think this is going to work. Thank you so much for your time. No, thank you. That's just sometimes how it goes. But if this is the first time this happened, maybe you decide to give them another chance. But then it's even more important to set clear expectations and deadlines. So then you may say, okay, I'm going to give you another chance. Maybe in 2 weeks from now, we're going to talk again, and then I'm going to give you some feedback. In these 2 weeks, I would like to see from you this and this and this, so that in the next 2 weeks, you can be very specific. So if you set specific goals like, oh, you didn't really, I felt frustrated because it seemed like you were not doing your job. Can you by next week get us 50 more followers? And they may say, okay, I can do that. Or create 50 more social media posts. Okay, I can do that. And then after 2 weeks, you say, okay, where are the 50 social media posts? If they exist, good job. If they don't exist, this is the time to be like, okay, well, we tried and it didn't really work. Thank you. It's really important to have that specific thing to talk about, because otherwise you can't be specific, because otherwise they're just going to be like, oh no, but like I did this and did this. But you guys, okay, but we set this goal and you didn't reach it, so no. And you can't be like, okay, but I disagree with your work. The more specific you can get with feedback, the better. It's really bad to say, you never do the work, you're always late. Say, yesterday you were late, and the day before you were late too, and I'm going to tell you the exact times you were late. Also, we had the goal of publishing 50 social media posts, and you published 22. Then you can talk about facts and not about generalizations. All right, my absolute favorite topic, approaching donors and collaborators. Some people in this room, I'm pretty sure, have already gotten this rant from me. And I'm sorry, because this happens to me a lot, and I feel like that's where I maybe need to get a little bit better with giving feedback. But the people that you approach, either to get money from, or people who you may want to collaborate with, or people you want mentorship from, those people probably get a lot of messages like that. And there's a good way to do this, and there's a bad way to do it. And the bad way, it's honestly just a waste of your time, and you don't want to be wasting your time when you approach people to help you. I found this really good image, like I have really good examples. This was in relation to networking, but I thought it was really important because I get these messages. I get these messages from my social enterprise, and it's like, hi, can I work with you? Or it's like, hi, can you help me get a job, your job? Or hi, I want to help out with Generation Impact. I usually respond to these things because I believe in young people and I want to help them. Most people wouldn't, because chances are, especially if you don't mention my name, I know that you've probably sent this message to like 50 other people, and that I'm just one of the many people you've sent this to. And that creates something that in psychology we call diffusion of responsibility. I don't know if this has ever happened to you, but if you walk into a classroom and say, hey, can someone help me carry my bag inside? No one's going to help you because the responsibility diffuses. But if you walk into the room and there's only one person in there and you're like, hey, can you help me carry my bag inside? Maybe the person doesn't want to, but there's no one else there. So they have no choice but to take the responsibility. The same thing goes on the internet. If you send out an email to 150 people that all go like this, hi, I really love your organization and I would love to collaborate with you. Looking forward to hearing from you. I know you sent that to everyone. But if you sent me something specific, if you sent me, hello, Julia, I really like the last post you posted about this and that. I really like the last workshop you did. I really like this. And I need help with something specific. That will get people's interest. So specificity is key. I get so happy when people don't message me, can we please collaborate? Because no one can do anything with that. Give me something specific. Hey, I would like you to speak at my event. Hey, can you advertise for me? Can you feature our organization on your social media? Then I can say yes or no. Don't write mass emails. It's not worth it. Just don't. Just make them personal. Build on a connection. So especially if you have been to a university, or if you are part of youth organizations and you're approaching someone who is not very close to you or someone you've never met, you need to build on or build a connection. And here, research is really key. So if I approach someone who went to the same high school as me, I can say, oh, hello, like we went to the same high school. I'm sure that you share my values of empowering young people. And then the person who receives my emails are like, oh, wow, Julia and I are so alike. I should help her. Create some kind of connection. If you don't have one, if this is really just a random person, create one. If you're messaging someone on LinkedIn, look up what they do. Form a connection somewhere. Find a common hobby. Make them care about you in your email. And if it's, oh, wow, your organization's mission to blah, 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 this shows me that you've done your homework, aligns with our organization's mission to da, da, da. Then I'm like, oh, wow, we're similar. I want to help you. Do your homework. Okay, if you already said, Dear Julia Schetelig, I can be more or less sure it's not a mass email, but I also know that there's ways, and I've done this before, there's ways where people can just insert your name and write a mass email. How you can avoid being ticked off as a mass email is show the people who you are working with that you know what they're doing. So if I receive an email saying, hello, dear Julia, I really love your resource platform, specifically this one resource that you posted yesterday. I know this is not a mass email because you literally just said something that I did yesterday. That means you know me. I'm like 250% more likely to respond to your email now because I know that you're addressing me. Also, especially when you're asking people for specific things, be specific, but also give them options of how they can help you. I see this a lot with people who ask for money. So they may ask, oh, we would love for you to perhaps donate 20%, so $250 of the overall goal, because that's what we're missing in order to make this project happen. By the way, in fundraising, I could give a totally different presentation just about fundraising. I'm going to give you some resources about that later. Never ask for the full amount. Ask specific donors for a little bit of it, but give them options how they can help. So especially when you fundraise on social media, most of your friends are not going to be able to donate, but they may be able to help you in a different way. So I'm running a fundraising program for Generation Impact at the moment because I have to pay for my website. And I gave people the options, hey, I know that most of you, especially the target audience I'm working with, you're probably not going to have the money to donate, and that's okay. But please send me a video of you saying, we are Generation Impact. That takes them like a minute, and I can use that video to make an awesome fundraising video. Or you can give people options, hey, if you don't want to donate, maybe you can give us some pencils and paper that we need for our workshop. Here you can combine doing your homework and giving people options if you know something about the person. So I have people who come to me sometimes and they're like, oh, can you feature us on your social media? But if they would have read a little bit more about me, they would have known that I mentor young entrepreneurs for free. So they could say, hey, if you can't donate or if you can't give us a social media shout out, maybe we could have a conversation and you can share a little bit about your advice. And then I can say, well, I don't have money to give to you right now because I'm fundraising myself at the moment, actually, but I'm happy to jump on a call with you and share some advice with you. So give people options, do your homework. If you write me an email like that, I will donate to your cause. I want to, in my life, one time receive an email that does all these things. And also be brief. People don't have a lot of time, and people don't have the time to read through 30 pages of your project proposal or your business plan. So make sure that maybe you can attach your business proposal or send it as a PDF, but in the message or in the email, you really want to keep it brief because you don't want to be wasting people's time. Activity. So perhaps you have Instagram or perhaps you have Facebook. I want you to practice what I just said. I want you to write me, because I manage all the social media channels on Generation Impact, because turns out my social media manager is not my social media manager anymore. Please write me on my social media a message of how you want to collaborate using all or a few of the things that I just mentioned. So I can go back to the slide on, I can give you my social media handles so that you know where to put this. So on Instagram, I am Generate Impact. Let me try to put this in here. So if you have Instagram, do it here. And on Facebook, you should find me if you look up Generation Impact, where I can also put in a link. And if you don't have Facebook or Instagram, then I applaud you because that is incredible. But you may send me a message in this chat. And I have to tell you, I did this activity with a group of like 8th and 10th graders the other day, and it went really well. So I expect you all to be just as good as these 14-year-olds, because I think most of you are older than them. So yeah, if you don't have Instagram or Facebook, message me here via the chat. But if you can, message me on social media. I also do this so that you have my social media channels after this, so that if you need help, that you can please contact me and get in touch. So I'm gonna give you 5 minutes, or no, you don't need 3. You don't need 5 minutes for this. I'm gonna give you 3 minutes for this, to write me a message using those things. I'm gonna go back so that you see the things that I've been talking about. Use one or at least a few of these things and I'll be super duper happy. Okay, I'm assuming that I'm gonna open my phone just in a minute and see all your lovely messages for collaboration requests. Also, don't worry if you got a little bit wrong, or if you feel like you don't know enough about Generation Impact. Usually you would have all the time in the world to draft this. So this is just really to get you to do something. Let's move on. So I changed this a little bit because you are all hopefully going to be social entrepreneurs after this, creating your own initiative, managing a team, making whatever you are doing. Because the truth is, if you're asking me, hey, how would I found this initiative? I would know, because you are the expert in the issues that you want to address. A lot of the issues that your community faces, I don't really know about. So I can't help you set up your initiative, but I can give you the building blocks of what you may need for that. So in a minute, I'm going to be talking a little bit about some resources on Generation Impact that may be of use to you. Yes, that includes fundraising. I know that that's a big one. But I'm also going to share some other resources. But before I leave you, I really want us to take a moment for one advice I want to leave you with. And that is that it's really easy to get caught up in the means and forget the big picture. Like, I definitely had times in the last year where, what am I trying to do? I'm trying to empower young people to make a difference. But day to day, I'm more like, have I gotten more Instagram followers? And it's really easy to get discouraged by that. It's easy to get discouraged. Oh, my fundraising campaign is not getting any likes. But you need to find ways to stay positive, and it's super possible to stay positive. First of all, find advantages in being small. That's something I had to learn, because of course we all would like to found the company that becomes the next Apple or Microsoft. But honestly, that would be very overwhelming, and you wouldn't be able to do a lot of the things that you can do when you're small. So one of my favorite things to do at the moment is there are a lot of social entrepreneurs in high school, especially in the US, and they all have Instagram accounts. So I enjoy so much being messaged by them and talking them through these things and being able to interact with them. If I was the CEO of Apple, I would not be able to interact with my customers like that. And in fact, if one of you, how many people I left in this call, like 40, if one of you messaged me and said, hey, can we have a in-person meeting? I could say yes. If my social enterprise in a year or so takes off, I wouldn't be able to do that. I would probably have to strategize, or I would have a big meeting, or I would have to talk to someone more important. And I couldn't really interact with the people that I want to interact with, and that is youth who wants to make a difference. So there are a lot of advantages in being small. Maybe they are not the same advantages as I found for me, but find them. Also remember collateral impact, especially if you're doing anything online, which at the moment you kind of have to. It's really hard to see the impact that you're having. A really good example right now, some of you have given me positive feedback, but maybe some of you will be inspired by this presentation I've given, or some of you may come across my website and find something really useful that changes your life, that makes an organization, that changes someone else's life and leads to something incredible. But I may never know about it because you haven't told me, and you don't need to tell me, you know? But I think especially as people who are trying to make change, and whether you're making change as a volunteer, as a social entrepreneur, or a social activist, we can't track. We are never fully aware of the impact we're making. Maybe one thing you said to a person in the right moment changed their mind and made them do something that leads to an incredible, great impact. And you don't know that, but you need to believe that that's going to happen. I need to work through a 2.5-hour workshop, hoping that if just one of you get something out of this, it will have been worth it, even if I don't know about it. Remember collateral impact. And be flexible with your product. If we go back to the theory of change, never forget the need you are trying to meet. So maybe one day I will figure out that Generation Impact is not really doing what the world needs right now. And maybe young people need a different thing to make a difference. And then I need to change my product. I need to change my approach. But never forget what you're trying to do and get too stuck in how you're trying to do it. And don't be afraid to make mistakes. Do we have time for this? I don't know how many questions people have, so I'm going to give you an option. If you want to stay back for the Q&A after I share my resources, you're super welcome to do that. But this is the Generation Impact email address. And if you feel inspired right now, and I hope that some of you are, and you're maybe thinking about creating something, I invite you to write a letter to yourself. So create an email and send it to me and write in the caption, letter to myself. And then you write in it, if I were to do this, Dear Julia, I just completed the social entrepreneurship workshop and I have this idea and I would like to make it happen, but these are my fears, these are my hopes, these are my thoughts. I'd be worried about this. And then in a year, I will send that email back to you so that you in a year can see where you were a year ago. Maybe you've grown, maybe you've made and created the impact that you wanted to create. And maybe your goal is just to give feedback better or to find a different way to make a difference. But I hope that if you're inspired right now and you feel like this could be a point in your life where things are flying, where you could maybe make a change and find a way to make a difference, write a letter to yourself so that I can send it to you in a year from now to help you remember what the beginning process was like. So you're welcome to email me there, and as soon as the chat window, if I re-find the chat window, I'm going to also put it in here. There we go. So you can email me your letter to yourself, or you can email me about different things. Oh, also, here, this is a link to my presentation. I just put it in the chat. If you want to look back at anything that I said, you can look through the resources later, or you can share it with your friends. None of these pictures are copyrighted, blah, 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 blah. And I also have links at the very end of this presentation that I'm going to share with you now. So if you, for example, want to learn more about leadership and self-care and mental health, I've recently given 2 different webinars about leadership and well-being, one for global change makers and the other one with Your Big Year. And they're online. So if you go on the presentation, you will find the videos in there. I also have a Corona care package online. So if you feel you need some mindfulness exercises that can center you and bring you calm and all of that, go on our website and click on resources in the drop-down menu. There'll be a Corona care package. I can show it to you in a minute. And it's really just a PDF you can download, and you can do little exercises that will hopefully lift your spirits, energize you, and show you some inspiring things. Here's what you've all been waiting for. Reese's around fundraising. Yeah, these are blog posts I've written. This is just really me trying to put all that I know about fundraising and crowdfunding into a blog post. So before you message me about crowdfunding, please read this and then we can move on. But I think that there's some really useful resources in here. Also, some random things I mentioned in the session. I mentioned collateral impact. If you want to take a look at how, read a little bit more about how I define my collateral impact and the collateral impact other people have had on me, there's a blog post sharing a little bit about me and my story. I have blog posts out there on racism and giving feedback that some of you may be interested in. And I have a blog post in detail talking about me messages and communication if some of you may be interested in that. Yeah, if you benefited from this session, I told you I'm a sucker for Instagram followers at the moment. That's where I derive like 50% of my pleasure from, apart from doing workshops. So if you want to follow me on social media, I'd be delighted. And I mentioned that I'm doing a crowdfunding campaign right now. If you have 30 seconds and would like to record yourself, say, "We are Generation Impact," you stand a chance to be part of my fundraising video, and I'd be delighted. I'm doing these workshops for free. I'm a student myself. I don't have any money, and I'm not asking anything from you in return, but if you could do one of these things, or perhaps even both, I'd be super duper delighted. Yeah, I also wanted to show you my website so that you know about some of the resources on there. There we go. So it's really just a website where you can say, do you see this right now? I hope you're seeing this. So let me load this. So you want to volunteer perhaps, and it gives you a bunch of different places where you can volunteer, or you want to reduce your carbon footprint, and it gives you a bunch of different resources for that. Or you want to just like be inspired and read about change makers. There's some blogs there, like someone mentioned TED Talks here, Tilt Magazine. Yeah, I'm annoyed with my own pop-up. Find competitions. So some of you may be, there are a lot of social entrepreneurship competitions out there that you may benefit from. So they're listed here. You can check out my blog. If this opens, I have a bunch of different resources. Yeah, I recently published a blog post on crowdfunding about racism, about activism, about the LGBTQ community. I have some racism right there. There's some mental health stuff out there. So it's really a resource for you all. If you want to make a difference, this is a great place to start. And if you find this useful, please share it on your social media and with your friends. We're always trying to increase that curve you saw in the beginning of engagement on my social media. And that is all she wrote in her plan. Whew, I've been talking so long at you and you're still here. Thank you. I was worried I would exit the conversation. There are like 2 people left, and it's the people who asked me to speak here. It'd be kind of awkward. Thank you for being here. I got some positive feedback in this chat room. Thank you so much. Officially we have, so I hope I'm not getting the time difference wrong here. I have officially 15 minutes left. Am I correct? If you nod, I can see you. Yes, okay. So now's the time for questions. If you have very specific questions to your nonprofit, your social enterprise, whatever you're doing, please feel free to reach out. But if you have a question that may apply to everyone, shout it out. If I don't have the answer, I will tell you I don't know. And even if I don't have the answer, I may say, oh, I know someone who could have the answer to that. Let me connect with you to someone who does have the answers. I am very blessed to have a pretty good network at this point of social entrepreneurs around the world, so I can connect you with people. Questions, thoughts, comments, concerns, favorite TV shows, random thoughts about food. Were there any questions? Oh my God, the chat is very long now, so I don't know if there was. If you put in a question earlier and it hasn't been answered yet, then this is your time to resend it. So if you don't have any questions, that means I either absolutely confused you or this was helpful. Jay, you have one. Please go ahead. And Christopher, you raised your hand. Let me take you after Jay. When can you have another session? Aww. You want to hear more of me? That is ridiculous and scary. Oh, Albert. Here, Albert. Thank you for being here. Albert has attended. This is like his 4th session with me. It's great. I have a fan. Thank you. A shout out to Albert. I love you, Albert. How do you actually present yourself with organizers or people making a good first impression actually? That's a really good question. For me, it's a mix between using all those collaboration things, being specific, being professional, being brief. So a lot of those things is me presenting myself to organizers and people. I mean, I guess Jay can talk to how I did that in the past weeks. I don't know. I think the most important thing is that you are authentic, because if you try to be someone that you're not, it's going to be awkward and people are going to see that. So even in conferences, like if you made a mistake, or like, oh, okay, that's kind of weird. I'm sorry about that. So people want to work with you because you are good at your job, or because you have a skill they want to share. But they also want to work with you because you're a nice person and you're funny. So if you're a nice person and you're funny, show that. Don't be afraid to like hide that between like a I'm trying to be professional face, which I see a lot in Asia, to be honest, more than I see it anywhere else. So if you're a funny guy, show me a good time. You know, like I'm doing this in my free time, and you know, like while I'm trying to get my 254th follower on Instagram, say something funny to me. I like to be entertained. So yeah, first good impression, humor is a big one. Yes, Sasha, I hope that answered your question. All right, I saw someone raise their hand. Christopher, did you raise your hand? Is Christopher still here? Or did he just accidentally raise his hand? It's like in class when you're like actually scratching your back and the teacher's like, do you want to say something? And you're like, no, I don't. Okay, Christopher, you do want to say something. Say something. Either unmute yourself or put it in the chat box. He may be just scratching his back. Christopher, I see you're talking, but we can't hear you. You're not muted. You are muted. Just put it in the chat box. I'm sorry, Christopher. All right. If no one else has any questions, I don't want to keep you here for any longer. I know that you all have great lives to go back to. And yeah, please get in touch. I am a very approachable person. I have a small organization, so I will respond to your messages if you message me. People in this call can vouch for this, my few fans in this audience. Thank you for joining me. Thank you to the 38 who are still here. I really appreciate it. I appreciate it seeing all the girls in here. I give too many social entrepreneurship workshops with way too many guys, and that's not because I don't like guys, but because I want to see more girls. So that's really great. Please share about how you started Generation Impact in short. How or why? Because how, it was literally just me spending a year spending lots of time on the internet Googling. So it was like youth opportunities, youth organizations, and then diving into Google and internet rabbit holes to find resources that are now one of the 170 resources on Generation Impact. So it's spending a lot of time on the internet, on random websites, on random organizations, trying to find the right resources. And then last summer, I had a little bit of time because I was working at the University of Pennsylvania and they didn't have a lot of time work for me most of the time. And I sat down and I created my website, and that drop-down menu that you saw, it took me like 4 hours to code that, because I know that some of you are like hackers and coders. I am not, so it took me legit like 4 hours to create that. So yeah, that's how so it was like the resources was really just Googling, and then putting it all together on the website. And then since then, it's just been writing blog posts, collaborating with people, spending too much time on social media so that I run into great people like Jay. Why I created it, the short version of that is that I saw so many young people in my generation who wanted to make a difference, but many of them were just kind of like, okay, but I don't know how, and I don't know what are the resources out there. And I was like, but there are so many resources out there. I wish there was a place that would bring them all together, and I'm trying to create that place. And with that, I am yielding to the representative of NxtGen, who wants to have some closing words. Suprema, I think you have the floor. Are you the representative of NxtGen?
Yes, thank you, Julia, the NxtGen team, and all the participants for putting together Monday's Social Entrepreneurship with Julia. if you haven't registered in International Digital Hackathon, which is about to feature 240 global participants. And if you haven't been notified, the registration link is there in the chat box. Please fill the feedback form for your certificate. The link is also in the chat box. So lastly, it's selfie time. So please, could you turn on the camera for the selfie?
Oh, can you do me a favor and say we are Generation Impact? Are we able to do this?
Okay.
Someone's dog is. I hope my dog doesn't hear it because she will bark back. If you can turn on your cameras, that would be great.
Could you please send the registration link?
Oh yeah, I think the registration link is not in here.
Okay, if you haven't got, then you will get the registration link in your email.
I can send it out again as well. All right.
Okay, thank you so much.
Can we all say we are Generation Impact?
We are Generation Impact.
On time. Okay. 1, 2. Wait. Can you? Now everyone has to unmute themselves. So can we make that happen?
Yeah, we can make that.
Cool. So I'm gonna ask you all to unmute. Unmute. Wow, now I can hear you all. Oh, I muted. I'm sorry. I'm gonna stop clicking buttons. All right. On 3, can we do it?
Yeah.
On 3, we're gonna say we are Generation Impact. 1, 2.
We are, sorry.
Is this gonna work?
We are Generation Impact.
Okay, hold on. Hold on. I'm gonna count to 3 and we're gonna say it. Okay, some people can still not unmute themselves. You should, by clicking on the little microphone. Otherwise, just write it in the chat box. Okay, otherwise we just have to deal with the people who are unmuted. On 3, we are Generation Impact. 1, 2, 3. We are
Generation Impact.
Yeah, that sort of worked. I liked it. Thank you guys.
Again, one time.
Thank you so much, Julia.
Thank you so much.
It was a great time with you.
Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you, Julia.
Now you can drop the call. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
Should I close the call?
Love you all.
Thank you. Thank you, NxtGen Nepal and Julia, my friend.
Albert,
Yeah.
we're the Southeast Asia squad.
Yeah.
Okay. Feedback link is there in the group. You can apply there for certificates. Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Welcome.
Should I close the call? Or should we just wait for people to trickle out?
Okay, bye everyone. You can leave now.
You may leave now. The torture is over.